involved in this topic of how to support families impacted by incarceration was kind of by accident, but not really. So when I was 6 years old, my dad was actually arrested and spent some time at the state prison in Stillwater. Um, so I grew up with that. I experienced it. I had that lived experience. I kind of tucked it away into the back of my mind throughout my growing up years and my adulthood. As a public health professional, I started to learn about something called adverse childhood experiences, and I learned that having an incarcerated caregiver or an incarcerated parent was one of the most common adverse childhood experiences, not only in Olmsted County, but also in Minnesota and in the country. And I'll talk about that a little bit today. Um, my colleague, Sheila Cascaden, who is a county board member and has been for a number of years, was on a state work group. And I told her about my experience as a child of an incarcerated parent. And she asked me to be on a work group at that time at the state level. And when I walked into that first meeting, I was the only person who had lived experience on the committee. And so it became very important to me to advocate for having the voices of lived experience at the table. Because, I was in my 50s at that time, and my experience was, a long time ago. And I think it's actually gotten harder and more challenging for families today than it was when my family experienced it. And I'll tell you, it wasn't easy for us either. So that's how I kind of fell into working on this topic. I did some work for Minnesota on this topic, also for Olmsted County. And so that's where my experience comes in. But I'm here today just as a volunteer to talk to you about how we can improve the educational experience of children of incarcerated parents. I'm going to talk most specifically about Olmsted County, but it really applies to all kids because this is a problem everywhere. Um, I hope you all have your smartphones handy. I'm going to do a little survey here. I'm going to bring this over. And this is a presentation that I gave to the Cradle to Career Educational Summit in October. And so if you were there, it's a repeat, but my guess is you didn't memorize it all. So here it is again. So what I'll have you do is on your cell phone, in your browser, go to menti.com. You can also do it on your computer if you have another window open. Once you get there, you'll see it'll ask you for a code. And you can see that code is up here. The code, if I get that out of the way, is 71787146. Once you put in that code, you can answer the question there. So what profession or organization do you represent? I just want to get a sense of why you're here and who you represent.
Can you repeat the code, please?
Yes, 71787146.
Okay.
Yeah, recovery is happening. I'm sure this would be a very pertinent topic in that organization and with the folks that you work with. Alliance for Chicanos, Hispanics, and Latin Americans. Consulting, obviously CMRC. People with disabilities.
Sorry.
That's okay. Someone who's an HR, life, and business coaching. Whoever that is. Oh, I know who that is. I say, let's talk. But we already have, I think. But we could talk more. I'm going to move to the next question. What do you hope to gain from this presentation? Why are you here? I mean, maybe it's you just, this is your normal meeting and this was the topic and so that's why you're here. But if there's another reason, I'd sure would like to know what it is. Mm, how can CMRC help? That's a good question. I'll be interested to hear what you all think once I get through the presentation. And listening and learning is good. I appreciate that. I'm going to get out of that for a while. You can still add responses once I take this screen away.
Push to present.
Just get back
Hello?
to.
Hey Al, Wendell here.
Hi, Wendell.
Yeah, just do I understand correctly? I need to do some present a little bit in the presentation.
Hang on a minute. I need to.
Maybe later in the agenda, Al?
Yes, glad to. Glad how. No.
I just
Okay,
saw
so
you.
how much time do you want me to take?
Wendell, this is Dawn, the other presenter. I just happened to
Glad
see
to
your
do so.
name.
Now, do
Oh,
I need to? I can just speak into the computer. Oh, okay. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'm in. I've got the. I'm watching and listening.
You actually, we can actually hear you on the virtual meeting right now.
Okay. All right. I'll hang up.
a lot going on there. Okay. Um, so moving forward, um, again, just as this is a review of a presentation I gave at the end of last year, last fall. I want to get you grounded first, give you a little bit of background, talk to you about what was going on in Minnesota and Olmsted County really between 2021 and or 2014 and 2021. That was when Commissioner Sheila Cascaden got really involved in at the Minnesota level about what should counties do to support families impacted by incarceration. She co-chaired a work group through the Minnesota Department of Health called the State Community Health Services Advisory Work Group on what is the role of counties in that. That work group after in 2020 started to transfer to the Juvenile Justice Advisory Committee because if you all remember around 2019 and 2020, COVID hit us really hard. And the Minnesota Department of Health no longer had any resources to support work around families impacted by incarceration. So that work group got moved. Um, but since then, the work has started back up, and we'll talk a little bit about what's happening post COVID. But over this time frame between 2014 to now, there's been some significant work that's happened at the county level in Minnesota to support families. So I'm going to show this video to give you some background on that. This is about a 10-minute video. I'd like it to be bigger.
We've had this program entering our 5th year and have only had one participant return back to jail.
It just really helped me when my kid was so traumatized for me going to jail and getting picked up and everything, and so scared of me going to jail or whatever, not being able to see me, to him being able to come here and like have just one-on-one with me and stuff like that, that like can help that process, I guess, you know.
There'd be times where I would notice a parent was in jail. I would let the school know ahead of time and just be like, hey, just be on the lookout to see what the kid's feeling like today, because it might be a rough morning or things like that. So I felt like the more outreach I did, the more that people were aware of the program and the more helpful it could be.
To have just that designated hour of just me and my kid reading books, coloring stuff, or playing games, or just telling good stories, like that really helped me. And every week, that's what I looked forward to, being able to go and do. And I'd go back to the block super happy. It gives you hope, like hope that you're gonna be able to see your kid, or just whatever support, whatever's gonna keep you going, some kind of like inspiration to actually better your life and to quit coming back to here, you know. When I was a kid, I didn't have that. My dad was in and out of jail with addiction and stuff like that. So I didn't get to have those experiences with my kids. And even though like I was in jail and it was a negative situation that I was in, I was still able to turn some kind of positivity into it and, you know, show my kid that whatever. And then my kids see me from being in jail to literally now I'm trying to help people and give back and stuff like that. So he's seen both sides of everything.
I learned and how I needed the culture to change, not only with my organization, but I see it changing throughout the state and in the country when it comes to children incarcerated caregivers.
It helped my son go from worrying about when he's going to see his dad next to knowing that on this day at this time he's going to see his dad, no matter what. He's my sunlight, man. Here, there, you don't see outside here too much, right?
I would say to many of my supervisors as we got further into this, I'd ask the question, who's in my jail? Meaning when I was sheriff, who's in my jail? And I would always get people who did crime, and that's why they're in your jail. And I said, whoa, time out. It's moms, dads, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, neighbors, and friends that are in our jail. And that's how we need to treat them.
Incarcerated mom, she started crying when I brought her back, saying that nobody else, she had been in the system, been to other facilities, nobody else cares that she's a mom. Nobody else treats her like her kids matter. And this gives her hope. To hear individuals say that you are giving them hope is pretty incredible.
So as we grew the program and as we grew the connections between the incarcerated individual and their family members, you could see the impact it was making.
We had a young man that was very young, and you could tell that he had never received like a diploma or a degree or anything, and just that I did it was just all written over his face, like I accomplished something. And the guys within the group start to bond with each other as well, and so they influence each other in a positive way.
As more counties jump on board, so to speak, and start doing this type of work, they're calling us as well and saying, how did you do X, Y, and Z? What worked well for you guys?
Exchanging the ideas from rural county to rural county is super important. This is working for us. Why don't you try it?
It's definitely a change format where they are just soaking up information so they can take it back to whoever's raising their kids, whether it's a wife, a partner, whoever, your grandparents, foster care, and they're able to now understand a little bit more about what they're going through and change situations for their children. So they're changing their children's lives.
They love their kids. That is very apparent. They're thinking about their families 100%. They may move for whatever reason, and if we can get more counties involved in it, they'll find those services and that help. It's a different curriculum. It's a different mindset, and be willing to take a chance. We're thinking outside the box here, right? I mean, we're working on something because what we've been doing hasn't worked. And so let's try this and see where it leads us.
I think a huge piece of our curriculum is emotional regulation, which really addresses the trauma piece. Right. How do you regulate your emotions if you've been through so much trauma?
What you see here, if we can have more empty jail cells, obviously that's going to be better for the community.
I want my children to be college educated. I want my children to have every independence and every ability, and I want that for everybody's children. So I think this program speaks to that.
Working with the family on the outside, they kind of learn to, how do I speak to my...
I'm going to stop it there, just because I want to get into the more of the meat of the presentation. Sorry about the quality of that video. not being able to see the whole screen. I'm not sure. I probably clicked something wrong, but you got the audio, you heard the people's voices, and I will let you know, Olmsted County is one of the counties in Minnesota that participates in that special program. They're teaching a curriculum in the jail to folks who are in jail about parenting skills. It's called Parenting Inside Out. So just a little bit of an overview. Who really is affected by incarceration? Well, about 17% of Minnesota youth have an incarcerated parent or previously incarcerated parent. 2/3 of the adults in Minnesota jails are parenting with a minor child. So they were parenting before they went into jail. And then we do know that Minnesota's youth of color and American Indian youth are disproportionately affected by parental incarceration, and it does impact entire families and entire communities. The reason why this is a problem is because this concept or this issue of adverse childhood experiences, which really are just stressful or traumatic experiences that people experience before the age of 18. And there are actually 9 different adverse childhood experiences, but they're categorized into abuse, whether it be physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, neglect, whether it be physical or emotional neglect, or dysfunction in the household. So living with someone with a mental illness, having an incarcerated relative, domestic violence, substance abuse, and divorce. The thing that we know about adverse childhood experiences is that they tend to be interrelated. They tend to occur in clusters. So for example, if you have an incarcerated parent, it's very likely that you also have had other adverse childhood experiences such as substance abuse in the home, living with someone with mental illness, domestic abuse, or any of those other adverse childhood experiences. And if you have 4 or more, that puts you at very high risk. The more ACEs you have, the more risk you have for long-term health effects that can start occurring in childhood or anytime during adulthood. So things like obesity and diabetes and depression and suicidal ideation, risky behaviors related to sexual promiscuity, heart disease, cancer, stroke. All of these things have been shown to increase as adverse childhood experiences increase. And this comes from the ACEs study that was actually conducted in the 1990s, where a couple of doctors named Rob Anda and Dr. Vincent Folletti wanted to study the effects of toxic stress on populations as a whole. And what they found through their work is that adverse childhood experiences disrupt the brain's development of children, which can lead to social, emotional, and cognitive adaptations that lead to those risk factors for major diseases and disability and social problems, and ultimately to early death. And since those original studies were conducted in the 90s, there's been a lot of breakthrough research in neuroscience and a science called epigenetics, which is the science of genetics and how the brain develops, to really show us that the ACE study really was biologically sound. And we do know that these are true things, that adverse childhood experiences can lead to lots of other lifelong problems. Here's some information about average childhood experiences in Olmsted County, and this comes from the Minnesota Student Survey that was conducted in 2022. This survey is conducted every 3 years, and it's given to 5th, 8th, and 11th graders in all schools in Minnesota. Not all schools participate, it's voluntary, but the Rochester Public Schools do participate. And so this is an comparison of Olmsted County as compared to Minnesota, but you can see almost 30% of the children in Minnesota reported living with someone who is depressed or has mental illness, which is the #1 adverse childhood experience experienced in Minnesota at that time. The second most common is having someone currently in jail or previously in jail. And in 2016, that was actually the #1 adverse childhood experience. And the list goes on and on there. And you can see, looks like Olmsted County fares a little bit better than Minnesota as a whole, but still we have a large percentage of kids that are experiencing trauma in their growing up years. And I do know that at one point Olmsted County had a community health needs assessment priority around mental health issues. And I know that that's still a subject that people want to begin addressing more effectively. And at one point, the Olmsted County Board of Commissioners had a priority to support families impacted by incarceration. I'm not sure if it's still in their list of board priorities in these past years or not, but it was at one point. So here's some more specific stuff from Olmsted County, and this is actually from the Minnesota Student Survey in 2019. This data analysis was done by an organization called Evident Change that I was working with in the early 2020s. Just to show you the difference between adverse, children who have had incarcerated caregivers versus those who have not had that trauma in their lives. So the thing that really jumps out at me here is that 34% of the children of incarcerated parents had 4 or more adverse childhood experiences in their life, as compared to 2% of those kids that hadn't had an incarcerated parent. So that's really huge, especially when you talk about the long-term impact potential that could have on that kid's life. And you can see that higher percentage of missing school, taking something from a store, being sent out of the classroom for discipline, running away from home, much higher level of homelessness. And there is one statistic out there that says if you have 4 or more adverse childhood experiences, you're 5 times, well, this says that you're 5 times more likely to experience homelessness. So the kids who have had an incarcerated parent are having more homelessness in their lives. Also, children of incarcerated parents are bullied more. They have more depression and more anxiety than their peers who have not had an incarcerated parent. They have fewer developmental assets. They don't feel as good about their future. They don't feel as valued and appreciated by others. It's more difficult for them to find ways to deal with things that are hard in their life, and a lower percentage of those kids say they feel good about themselves. So it's clear that children of incarcerated parents are at risk for poor outcomes and need additional support in Olmsted County, in addition to Minnesota and the nation. The other thing I want to point out is that there's additional trauma potential because kids sometimes witness the arrest of a parent. Obviously, they're separated from their parent. There's a lot of stigma and shame, and we already talked about the bullying that goes along. So not only are those kids potentially experiencing the trauma of being separated from their parent who is incarcerated, but they have these other things potentially going on. There's good news though, because ACEs are not destiny. There are protective factors that can have a positive buffering effect for kids as their brains develop. And the more protective factors obviously provide better protection. It's about being resilient and thriving, and this concept of self-healing communities. What I want to tell you is that we're not broken. Right? We can be resilient. I have another Menti poll for you. Let me see if I can find it here. Wait a minute, there it is. Okay. Out of there. Okay, just in your menti.com, use the same code. Here's the question. What do you think is the number one predictor of whether children will drop out of school, have greater unemployment, and risk for incarceration. What's the number one predictor of whether children? Dysfunctional family. Maybe. Dysfunctional is kind of a real generic term that could mean lots of different things. Shaming, lack of support. Okay, I'm going to leave it at there. The lack of support is a really good answer. Here's what is not a good answer. Because there's this school of thought out there that if you have an incarcerated parent, somebody came up with this statistic that you're 6 times more likely than other children to be incarcerated as adults. There's actually no data out there to support it. And this was actually published in the National Conference of State Legislators in 2009. But you still hear that statistic once in a while, and nobody really knows where that came from. Somebody made it up. It's simply not true that just because you have an incarcerated parent that you're 6 times more likely than other children to be incarcerated as adults. There are a lot of factors that play into that. And one of the things that came out in that video, in case you didn't catch it, is guess what? Those parents love their kids, and those kids worry about those parents. The folks that go through those parenting classes are least likely to recommit the crime or to end up back in jail or prison because of that intervention that took place. And they're learning good, healthy parenting skills that can help their children to be resilient. And so it really, the indicator is how much support they really have. And even one trusted adult can make a huge difference to a kid, just one person. So in supporting children of incarcerated parents in schools, this information comes from Dr. Whitney Hollins, who wrote a book called Foregrounding Youth Voices to Improve Educational Support. And she challenges that deficit-based view. She says, you know, there are a lot of good things going on in families. There's a lot of strengths, and we need to give space for children's voices to discover what's happening in their world, to tap into their strengths, to understand their vulnerabilities, and to highlight the good in families. We need to have those children have a voice. And that's where resilience comes in, where we can nurture the healthy development and apply protective systems to inoculate children and families to overcome potential threats and adversities as the children develop, especially their brains. If we damage or destruct the systems that provide resilience, of course, then there's going to be dire consequences for individuals. There's actually 3 protective systems that interact and guide adaptation to trauma, and I'll talk about those. There's capabilities, there's attachment and belonging, and there's community, culture, and spirituality. And I want you to know that schools play a significant role in all of these. The protective factors of individual capabilities are: how does the child view themselves? Do they have a positive view? Do they feel like they can do things well and take care of themselves, get things done? And can they regulate their emotions in an effective way? Then there's attachment and belonging. One of the things that came out in the survey for Olmsted County students in 2019 was that about 1/4 of them said they did not have an adult to talk to if they had a problem. Whereas children that had not experienced incarceration, only 9% of those kids felt like they didn't have anyone that they could go to. And so being that one trusted adult can make a huge difference in a kid's life. So here's some more information about protective factors in our community and in our school. What I want to point out here is that only 20% of students in Olmsted County in 2022 felt that they could talk to a school adult about the problems they're having. And only 27% felt that the adults in their community cared about them. And this is all students. So my guess is that if they're children of incarcerated parents, that these numbers would be actually lower. So there's some definite opportunities for improvement in our own community. So how do you do that? How do you create safe school spaces? Dr. Holland says you want to foster positive relationships, be authentic with kids, be real. They know when you're faking it. Be reflective, be conscious, be an ally, be willing to learn. I like to really sum it up with this one question about 10 different things, or 7 or 8, I'm not sure how many there are, but this is from the Children of Incarcerated Parents Bill of Rights, which actually was developed in San Francisco in 2003. And this really speaks to me. And the first time that I read it, I snapped my fingers. I'm like, yep, that's it right there. So what can we do? What can we do to assure that children are kept safe and informed at the time of their parents' arrest? Because guess what? It's super scary. Kids don't know what's going on. It's traumatizing. What can we do to assure children are heard when decisions are made about them? Considered when decisions are made about their parent? Well cared for in their parent's absence? Able to speak with, see, and touch their parent? Most jails in Minnesota do not allow in-person visiting. It's the exception and not the rule. And Olmsted County only allows video visiting. There's no in-person, and most counties are like that. How can we assure children are supported as they face their parents' incarceration and not judged, blamed, or labeled because their parent is incarcerated? When we can figure out these things, we've done a good job of support and moving in the right direction. You need to trust the experts. Remember that the people closest to the problem are also the closest to the solution, but oftentimes furthest from the power and the resources. The kids are the experts. And I put this in here because this stays with us through our life from cradle to career. We carry a lot of things with us when we go to school, including our experiences, but ACEs are not destiny. We can have protective systems that give us resilience. We have to put them in place. Currently, we don't have a lot. This also impacts us as adults because we bring these things to work. Not only do we bring our head, our hearts, and our briefcases to work every day, but we bring our experiences. And this can really impact our work performance. We all come from something, and so we carry all these experiences with us. So not only do we need to worry about it as how it impacts our children, but how it impacts us as adults and how it impacts our friends, our neighbors, our coworkers. So that's the end of my presentation. I'll take any questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and open it up if there's any questions. I know that's a lot of information in a little bit of time, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Hey, Don. I know there's another program called, I think it's Poised. I think the person is Leslie Soda. Yeah.
Yep.
So do you have any connection with both programs? Because I feel that these are programs that can actually be able to work together.
Yeah, actually, I met Leslie as I was in the thick of all of this, and I actually helped her receive a grant to do some stuff for kids. I've worked with her and for her and given some presentations as part of Poised. Yeah, she's actually, I think she's an amazing woman. Yeah, and that's parents of incarcerated sons and daughters. She actually had one of her children was incarcerated, and so that's how she got involved. Because seeing there weren't any resources for her either. Also, one of her children's fathers was incarcerated too. So she came from that table of lived experience. I actually have
I
encouraged
know
her
her
to
very
get
well.
involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
awesome.
We used to work. We used to work together. We worked together for like almost 10 years actually. So I know her very well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she's awesome. Yeah, we know each other.
So I'm
Someone
just
else?
thinking there's a symmetry between these kind of programs because I feel that because sometimes, you know, I mean, sometimes it's parents that are in incarceration, sometimes it's parents that are trying to do something. So being able to really connect these two set of people can be really big because, again, they feel what each other feels. So the kids are struggling, the parents are struggling. How can they really be helped to really comfort each other? Maybe having the symmetry in that area can really help.
You know what the problem is? Nobody wants to pay for it. I had a special assignment with Olmsted County to further how Olmsted County and Minnesota could support children of incarcerated parents. And I did that for about a year, and then COVID happened, and I got reassigned to COVID. And then once COVID was over, they said, we're not going to have you do that anymore. So there's no funding for it. That's the problem. And it's going to require a system change, and that's slow and painful. And some people don't see it, don't even see the need.
Yeah.
So this is all about raising awareness so we can change attitudes and move to action, but there's not a burning platform for most people to say, oh, I'm ready to jump in and do something.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a comment, maybe a question, maybe just thinking about immigrants, right? Undocumented parents might have when they get deported or they get arrested to put it, deported. That's similar to your slide about being arrested. In fact, it's probably even more traumatic probably that experience.
Oh yeah.
The parents get, taken away. The kids come home and then, from school or something, and notice that the parents no longer there. So do you
It
have
would
any
be
comment
better
on
if
that?
they were, well, for me, from my professional and personal opinion, it's better if the parent is taken away when the kid's at school than the kid having to be there when it happens. I was there when my dad was arrested, and it's an indelible image that I will never forget. It when I think about it, it gives me anxiety. It's traumatizing. They don't come in and knock on the door and say, "Hi, how are you?" They break the door down and they come in with guns and they're hollering, and it's pretty scary when you're a little kid. Yeah, that whole immigration, the whole ICE thing. I mean, that's a real problem. That's a real problem.
Another question I have, you have this percentage of, do you have numerically what that percentage may represent in Olmsted County, for example? You said 20 somewhat percent of this,
Yeah,
of the young people.
14%. Yeah, I don't know the number, but it's, I don't know how many kids are enrolled in 5th, 8th, and 11th grade, but somebody could look that up and then do the math. Hundreds of kids, right? There's one in every classroom. According to Matt Ruzak, who used to be the principal at Riverside Elementary, at that point, he knew there was at least one kid in every classroom in Riverside. And they had some listening sessions with the kids, and the kids themselves identified the fact that children that are separated from their parents need support at Riverside. The kids themselves were asking for it because they knew they had classmates who were separated from their parent, either by divorce or death or incarceration, deployment. I mean, there's a lot of reasons kids get separated from their parents. Unfortunately, having incarceration is the socially unacceptable reason.
Anybody
yeah,
else have? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just asking, anybody else have any question or comment? I'm kind of looking at Charlie, being that he's involved with some of the similar issue, whether that he has any kind of additional comment. I'm not sure. Maybe
He's
it's
there,
not.
but everybody's muted.
Yep. Anyhow, so if there's no additional question, oh, maybe I do have one. I actually took a note. I knew that you were involved when you were in Olmsted County, you were involved with joint study on racism.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yes, I
So I
was.
guess
Yep.
the question really is that there's some through line and a connectivity, I assume, between the joint study on racism, right? Some work item maybe that's connected with this issue or directly or indirectly.
Well, of
So,
course, they're
yeah.
indirectly related, and obviously one can see how they would be related. Just the disproportionality is there. Minnesota as a state has a low incarceration rate compared to some other states, but our rate of incarcerating people of color is high. And so that's where that disproportionality comes in. We know that children of color are impacted significantly more than white kids. And so here I am, a white kid, trying to advocate for children of incarcerated parents. And I'm not even, the people of color have more lived experience just because of, it really comes down to the war on drugs and all of the things that happened in the early 1970s that really got people of color to be more incarcerated. There's minor drug violations and things like that. So
Okay.
it took its toll.
Miriam, do you have a question or comment, Miriam, or you don't? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Don, for talking to us about this. Very important. And hopefully we can connect some more further.
Yes, thank you for having me. Thanks for listening. Al, there's that link to the video in the PowerPoint. I would encourage everybody to watch that on their own so you can get the full screen, because that was really not the best. I mean, the words you could hear, but it's nice to see the faces of the kids and the dads and the moms,
In
So,
fact, it's posted on my on the CMRC website already.
all right.
I can send you the link. Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment.
Sure.
That yes, we do know kids that parents had gone through those stages in life, and however, still we have a lot of work to do, and I'm so thankful, Don, that you are in that situation, that you're bringing awareness, and hopefully we will be able to do service with what the information that you brought. Sometimes we do not we don't pay attention to those issues. I mean, I am a social worker, and normally you want to bring narratives of successful stories, not I'm going to make a point of looking for a successful story after an incarceration or something that is tough. So that's something that I haven't explored, and there are successful outcomes. Eh,
I'm one.
yes, yes. So
I
thank you
had a
for.
lot of good resilience factors. I had a very supportive family and um, yeah. So I'd love to talk more about it with anyone who wants to learn more. Thank you all for listening, for letting me give a voice to this. But I would like the kids of today to give a voice to it. And it's not uncommon, Miriam, for people to say, "Oh, I never thought of the kids before." It's because you just don't think of it. It's like what the guy said in the film. He's like, "Well, who's in our jail?" Well, it's people that commit crimes. Yes. And they're people's moms, people's dads, people's brothers, people's cousins, sisters. They're people who made a mistake. Doesn't mean they don't love their kids. And so we can't expect the burden of all that to be put on the kids, and we do it unknowingly without recognizing the trauma that that creates.
Okay,
It's powerful.
thank you very much.
Thanks. I'm going to leave you. Have a
Thank,
good rest of the week, you
all right.
guys.
Thank you,
Thanks
Dan.
for listening.
Thank you. Yeah, bye.
Supposedly, the topic was having Wendell to talk to us about respect, making the 2024 the year of respect. He just dropped off. I noticed he's dropped off. He's not here.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation that you did on Friday, Al. How did it go?
Well, I thought that, if I thought, hard to tell. I thought it went well. Was well received, I thought. I don't know. I think George was there, and then Charlie
I
was
thought it
there.
went well as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. Maybe they are better to comment on it. Yeah.
Good, good, good.
I thought Al did a very nice job of pulling the story together and talking about him coming to the United States and the importance of the Constitution and learning. I thought he did an excellent job.
Yeah, thank you, George. Now somebody's calling me here. Windows having problem, looks like. Hello, Wendell. Actually, all right, okay, yeah. I Let me just see what I can do for him. All right, I'll put you on speaker.
Sure.
Yep. Go ahead, Wendell.
I didn't get a chance to listen to previous discussion. What a delight. Thanks for the concern for kids who are parents are incarcerated. My goodness, what a tremendous both need and opportunity it is to value our young people. And so I wanted to say thank you for your compassion. And I just saw some of the people on. Miriam, hello, hope you're doing well. And appreciate the good work ACLA does. Amongst the things I'd like to just briefly talk to you about a little bit is our campaign that we've decided that was pretty important, and I have a bunch of people working on it now, called 2024, the Year of Respect. Our mission statement is valuing others and valuing others together. It's been a wonderful opportunity to get to know a variety of people in town. I personally have been in town for 40 years and have worked with a wide variety of people, of course, over the years. And it's been a great privilege to come alongside with people to say that how can we make our community stronger, basically where
began out of a context of politics and COVID back in 2016, obviously pre-COVID. The election was the campaign and election were certainly times of challenge where the dignity of people was not very much upheld, and so what we that was a good starting point to say we could do better than this. And actually, one of my friends, Dr. Bill Doherty, was a co-founded a program called, at the time, Better Angels. Now it's called Braver Angels, and that got me to thinking substantially about how could we do a lot better. And in the process, it seemed like one of the things that was so important to doing better was, could we listen more effectively? And so that got me to doing some substantial thinking in regards to how do we improve people's listening skills, of which I've been in the process now for a little while and actually I've finished writing a new book that will be coming out later on this spring called The Listening Toolkit, or 60 Tools to Expand Your Listening Skills. And the listening side of it was a significant part. Of course, one of the things about listening that's so important is the aspect of listening is the first step to understanding. Listening is a step to learning. It's an opportunity to make a significant difference in our communication. And if we know how to be effective listeners, we'll change a lot of our relationships with people. And so that was part of the process of what we were talking about with the aspect of developing a year of respect. Our elevator statement is this, that this is a magnificent mission worthy of every effort we can individually and collectively give. 2024, the Year of Respect, is a community-wide initiative that strives to reshape our attitudes and actions towards each other. Join us in this head and heart experience as we take actionable steps to build a kinder community that is a light and example for the world. Let's do this together. And I think there's some just exceptional thoughts within that particular statement, that it's both a head and a heart experience. It's head in that way, how we respond to people, like Mayor Norton has said, we've got to get some more civility into this. And that just being simply polite to people is not necessarily ordinarily common. It is certainly for a lot of us, but there's a lot of people who we encounter who don't really understand a whole lot about politeness. And if we can be kind to them, if we can be more gentle with them, if we can respect the differences, we can go a long ways. I know it sounds so basic, but I'm excited about the fact that we're going back to basics, and we're trying to teach people how to do basics and how to respect one another, how to value each other. We've got 4 components of the valuing people. We talk about encouragement, giving the gift of encouragement, listening, the first step to understanding, serving, everyone can serve and everyone can make a difference, and then respect, how to differ and disagree wisely. So what we're hoping to do is to do some basic efforts with simple things such as an encouragement card, such as telling positive stories online, in the media, working with the media to do a lot of PSAs and a lot of opportunities to tell stories. Stories are so very important, and appreciate, Al, your telling your story last Friday night in an event that is so important that we understand where people are coming from and that we can learn from them. And we do this in essence by, we've got an exercise called Your Story, My Story, which walks through a person's life from family and home to kindergarten years and grade school years, and then the teenage years and young adult years 18 to 30, and the adult years of 30 to 45, and middle adult years 45 to 60, and then the golden years, and then
senior citizen years and even into the 90s, and we're working on telling stories of people who allowing them to tell their stories who are 100 years old or older. So we're quite pleased with this, and we're working on not only larger events like service events. This coming summer, we hope to do a Beautify Rochester campaign. We are looking also at having special guests come in. Bill Doherty himself will be with us on March the 15th out at the Heinz Event Center. Bill is the head of Braver Angels, and we'll be talking about such things. We'll be talking about such things as how to reduce the rancor in the community. I know we've had quite a few events in the community that are geared towards helping us do that, and we've got to genuinely work on this thing. I had opportunities to speak in different kinds of settings where people on either the significantly the left side or significantly on the right, and kind of more the extremes of both sides, and they have a lot to say and a lot of hurt to express, but we just really need to be people who can listen to them, and then ask them to help us understand where they're coming from, and hopefully we can begin to build communication opportunities, bridges to communication that will help people not to get so totally bent out of shape when they're talking to each other. Boy, I tell you, I've watched how these kinds of things in board meetings and school board meetings and in city council meetings, and they're just not healthy. They're just wiping us out. And we've got a chance to return back and emphasize the concept of respect as we work towards things. Not only do we have a chance to respect people, but we have a chance to value them. And valuing is something that's a heart matter, where we look at people, we respect them for who they are, but we also value them for the contributions that they can make. And it's just a wonderful thing when we look at people and see them as people of worth and of value, and then we treat them that way. And so that's a lot of what we're looking at doing. We've got some very tangible things like the encouragement card, or the I Hug campaign, the You Done Good card campaign. The wrap in the newspaper this past weekend was distributed to 20,000 households in Rochester. And so overall, we're pretty excited about what's going on. We're learning, we're growing. We don't have our act all together. We just felt that if we could collectively work with a variety of people, and let's return respect to our community, and let's make 2024 a year where we treat people with dignity, and we uphold who they are as people. So that's in a nutshell story. Obviously, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Anybody have any questions? Hopefully everybody can hear. Can you hear us? Yeah, good. Yeah.
Yeah, we had that.
And Wendell, I do maybe this is Al. I do maybe have one comment, maybe just
sure,
in the sense that I think I'm sort of aware of the Braver Angel, right? And
yes.
they also into having how to have tough conversation, right? They also
right.
Yeah. And so that's a part I really wanted to learn more, right? Yeah. Just yeah.
Is how to have positive and productive elephant in the room discussions.
Right. Yeah,
and
looking forward to that kind of, because right, what the concern that I sometimes have is that there are really topics that are the elephant in the room kind of question. Right? So how do we approach that and still get each other's point of view across? You can listen to each other. Yeah.
Well,
We can't hear him anymore.
Basic to everything that we do.
Oh, hang on a minute. You cannot hear.
Yeah.
Can you?
Yeah,
that
I
was
can
too-
hear now.
Okay, go
Initially,
ahead.
I couldn't hear. So.
Yeah. Go ahead, Wendell.
Please help me understand. When you said such and such, and but before having an emotional reaction to it, which is the most normal thing in the world to do, is to say, especially with somebody who I disagree with substantially, the question is, would you please help me understand your thinking? And if I can then take some time out and actually listen without coming to a conclusion. Listening is not something where I wait my turn so I get my turn to speak. Listening is something I want to learn from. And if I can say to the person who is disagreeing with me, please help me understand, and then listen to them explain themselves. And then hopefully you will give them an opportunity to explain your point of view as well. Those are one of the basic things that we talk about. We need to have some guidelines as to our discussion. There's a lot of things we can do in difficult situations that to say, you know, I don't understand or agree with you, but I want to learn from you. I can learn from you. Boy, that goes a long ways. And then just listen to them and let them explain themselves. Then turn around and say, let me see if I understood you correctly. This is what I understood you to say. Did I understand correctly? And repeat back to them what their point of view is. And you may ask the question, how did you come to this point of view? And have you always been there with this point of view? There's some things, some great questions that we can ask. And instead of making statements, if we ask questions, we oftentimes get a lot further down the road.
Thank you. Ao, do you have a comment or question or?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this is something that, to be honest, I've been thinking about it myself, because I just look at a lot of things these days. We live in a world of two extremes, and those two extremes, they just cannot sit down to speak to each other. And I've been asking myself, is this how the world will continue? Because I don't think it's serving any of us well at all. Because it's more of, I mean, it's either or. It's not, we can, because again, all of us will not agree on the same thing. All of us don't see the world from the same perspective, but can we find something in the middle? And I'm glad this is coming up, because it's something that I think we all need, especially also when I look at it. I mean, politicians are politicians for sure. I mean, I've said it many times. I respect them, but at the same time, on average, they're looking for votes. That's just the way it is. But at the end of the day, we fight ourselves, we hate ourselves. At the end of the day, when we are in trouble, who do we call? My neighbor. That's the person I'm calling. I'm not calling a politician to come and help me. I'm calling my neighbor to come and help me. How can we reinforce this neighborhood mentality that we continue to have that? I'm glad that is coming up. So I just want to thank you very much for bringing it up, Wendell.
Al, could you, for some reason, I didn't quite get as clear a response on the phone as I should have. Could you just kind of summarize the gentleman's response? By the way, thank you so much for your thoughts. What I did hear sounded good, but I want to make sure I heard you clearly. So, Al, could you maybe summarize the thoughts?
I think the paraphrase would be is that we count on a relationship, and we need to build relationships, particularly in the polarized world of getting to talk to politicians. Politicians tend to be polarized in the way they talk to each other. So if we can just develop better relationship with our neighbor, with our friends, that may be the essence what OA was saying.
Yeah.
Lovely. I don't know who the gentleman was who spoke, but right on. I just incredibly right. It's not about these amazing solutions that we have. It's more about, can we do the basics? Can we talk to our neighbors? Can we talk to the people that we go to work with? I mean, the other day I pulled out a Quick Trip. I saw a person who looks differently than I do, and he was standing there, and I just waved at him, and he waved back. That was a wonderful thing. I was speaking in a situation where I was with an individual who, frankly, I don't value. I need to, but I had an opportunity to shake hands with him, and something inside me said, shake his hand warmly and say thank you for being here. I did that, and I don't know what happened. Something changed in me, because he looked at me and he grabbed my hand then too warmly and said, well, thank you for coming. And I think that simply a matter of acknowledging that people exist. I mean, the Star Tribune said in the article a few days ago, 25% of all Americans live alone. 25%. And they need somebody to talk to them and listen to them. There's value in saying, hi, how are you? And I found another question that goes really well is, tell me was important to you this past week. What's important to you that's going on in your world right now? And then just listen. And it doesn't have to be profound. We don't have to have a ton of grants to make it happen. We don't have to have a lot of money. We need some basic things like just listening to people and to ask them what's important to them and to hear them out and to say, could you explain this to me? I love what the gentleman said. Yes, thank you.
I would add that Wendell, that CMRC is trying to do that, because we're all of different ethnic groups, cultural groups, BIPOC groups, that we realize that if we don't hear each other's story, we tend to have a win-lose kind of a presumption that we work silo, then there's a tendency that if you don't really understand what the other party is doing, you develop suspicion and speculation of what's going on. Therefore, that's the reason, I think one of the reasons why we have CMRC, really to bring the different groups together so that we can hear each other's voice and then combine the voice to make our voices more powerful. That is really what CMRC is about.
Much good things are going on. We, like you said, collectively, if we do it together, we're going to have that much more influence. And I can't say thank you enough for all the good work that already has been done. And we just have got, it seems like COVID sucker punched us. We were already on a kind of a downhill thing from 2016. Yeah, it was out for longer than that. But then we kind of separated ourselves. We didn't hear very much from each other, and now we've got to be intentional and be instructional to say that we can do better, and we will with God's help be better in this whole thing. We can do more, and let's strive together to do that.
Okay, thank you for the message. And then, by the way, hopefully we're recording all this. I don't know how it's going to turn out with some of the new wrinkle here with you calling in, but the recording is being done, so we can probably share the conversation now as well.
And I hope to get a chance to we'll try to do this again. But also I want to have an opportunity to sit down with a lot of people and listen to their story. And we're going to try to train people how to run groups that can tell their story. I think it's going to be an exciting type of thing. So let's look forward to doing it together.
Okay. George, you have something to say, or you just clapping your hand? George Thompson is on.
Do I have something to say? Well, actually, thank you, Wendell, for the opportunity to try to do something in the community that hopefully will bring us all together. You said a number of things. One of them is listening to people. It's extremely important to be able to listen, and also listen with the idea of not about what I'm going to say in defense, but to really understand what the point that they're attempting to make. And so I applaud you, and whatever we can do to assist you and Charlie and the group, because it's going to take a community effort to do it. But we are quite capable in this community of really coming together. I've seen it happen before, and I know it can. So thank you for leading this one.
Well, George, you're most welcome. You and Al have been, and Miriam and others, and Charlie are a tremendous source of encouragement. And your role model, it speaks loud and clear. So thank you for not only what you're doing now, but for years of making a difference in our community. It's greatly appreciated.
Okay, thank you. All right. You can stay on. We're just closing now. Actually, this is the last part of our meeting tonight. And unless somebody have any comment or announcement, wait a few minutes. Doesn't look like it. Well, then everybody has a good evening, and thank Sabina. Hi. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next month. Bye.
Good to see everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for everything.